Hi everyone, and welcome to the Cybersecurity Sauna. My name is Janne Kauhanen, and I will be your sauna majuri and the host of this podcast. Thank you for joining us for another session where we sweat out the hot topics in security. Welcome to all listeners, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at Cybersauna. In our last episode, we went over some notable infosec developments from last year. Now that 2022 is firmly behind us, all eyes are turning toward the year ahead. What should we expect? Is there some disaster on the horizon that we need to prepare for? Are there any positive developments that we can look forward to? We're joined once again by cybersecurity advisor Paul Brucciani and WithSecure intelligence researcher Andy Patel to discuss some of the trends we should look out for in 2023. So one of the things that has been predicted for the coming year is that cryptocurrencies will be the focus of the most sophisticated and persistent attacks. Our own Mikko Hyppönen is saying that cryptocurrencies have an inbuilt bug bounty system, whether or not you want it. What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of incentive to do that.
Yeah.
When I think about that, I think of Lazarus. Right? I mean, the North Korean APT, they make a lot of money by stealing cryptocurrencies and doing things with SWIFT. Even if that stuff goes down, it's still inflated in value. Your problem, I suppose, is trying to turn that back into something that's usable as a real currency.
It's certainly an area that's being targeted by cyber criminals who recognize that they can harvest wealth from cryptocurrency holders more easily than they can from attacking more conventional targets. I think last year in 2021, it's reported that something like, well, numbers vary, but the most commonly occurring number is $2 billion of cryptocurrency were stolen from people's cryptocurrency wallets during that period. I'd be also interested to understand how much wealth was lost by people forgetting their passwords and losing access to their wallets.
Yeah, and also, like, what interests me is, like, how much of that is theoretical value? Like, I mined this coin that is valued by crypto bros at this amount, but nobody actually wants to buy it off me. So, like, how much of that was sort of theoretical value and how much of it was people who are speculating in cryptocurrencies, like actually paying like actual money for their currency?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff going on where people sit in these chat rooms and have their currency in Binance or Coinbase or whatever, and then they just speculate. So they buy this and sell that like they would do stocks. But then there are these people who intentionally pump and dump all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, from what I understand, that's how FTX made quite a lot of their money at the beginning, is that they actually created new shit coins, basically pump and dumped to make money off of them. And they paid people on Twitter to push them to advertise those coins. And then they got a lot of investors. Then they dumped it right before the investors were able to capitalize on it. I mean, how else do you make $1 million a day?
I think for risk-thirsty investors who want to speculate in cryptocurrencies, now's the time to get involved, because there are a number of cryptocurrencies in the market. Not all will survive. Like everything in the digital age, it's a case of the winner takes all. And who that winner will be, don't know. Would it be Ethereum with a superior method or computation less intensive method of verifying identity compared to Bitcoin, or would it be Bitcoin? I can perceive consolidation happening within the cryptocurrency market, and one or both of those two organizations being amongst the winners.
You'd hope that people are a little bit more weary of all these new coins that pop up, especially after FTX.
Right, like given the zero-sum nature of this exchanges, like every time somebody makes a killing, somebody else is taking the hit.
Yeah.
I think they'll come to a point where a threshold is reached, and the cryptocurrencies, if they gain in importance, economic importance, which they have done over the last decade, if they continue going that way, there will be government regulation will loom, because these organizations will become too large to fail in a sense, in that if they do fold, then that will have severe economic effects. So I think we can see a day when whoever survives in the cryptocurrency consolidation phase, we can see regulation being imposed on them.
Binance is already asking for regulation, because I think that, regulation will bring a bit more trust and a bit more safety to dealing with it.
It would be a catalyst for growth.
Right.
I can see why they're asking for it.
But regulation and consolidation, and some of these technologies have been around for a while. There's been security testing, both like actual security testing and people trying to hack the systems. it's getting harder and harder to find vulnerabilities and then break these things. But at the same time, as their value increases, the payoffs are also there. Because like we said, there is that bug bounty element that if you can figure out how to steal money out of a cryptocurrency, then you get all that money. Do we think that this is an area where we're going to see the most sophisticated and persistent attacks out there? Like, is this field going to lead the cybercrime research?
Well, if the past is anything to go by, then criminals will tend to focus on where the money is.
Right.
So.
But it might not just be the big sophisticated attacks that make the money. I mean, there's a lot of scams going on where people are just being persuaded to part with some cryptocurrency for an investment that looks good and turns out that the person just pockets all that currency. And those can become rather long-term social engineering scams where the person leads you along and builds trust for a very long time before they even start talking about cryptocurrencies or investment or anything.
I think that in the longer term is perhaps at least a bigger threat to the stability of cryptocurrencies than attacks by James Bond-like attackers with endless resources. The confidence of the little people and their ability to protect their wealth in cryptocurrency wallets.
So once they get good enough, the cryptocurrencies, once it gets hard enough to find vulnerabilities, people are sort of going to stop looking because it's easier just to scam people.
Yeah, it'll shift from the technology that underpins the currency to the people that use it.
Okay.
And those people, by the way, don't need to even be in cryptocurrencies at the time that they get scammed. I mean, they can be persuaded to purchase cryptocurrency with real money, and then it gets stolen. So they're not necessarily targeting people who are already crypto bros.
Another piece of interesting technology that has been anticipated to be a bigger target in the future is satellite communications. We've already seen them play a big role in, for example, the war in Ukraine and getting connectivity to remote areas to the point where it's starting to become like a geopolitical thing. Do we think that satellite communications are also becoming a geopolitical target?
I think that's true. I think telecoms technologies like 5G come with advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are obviously that they bring telecommunications to people who have hitherto not been able to communicate to remote locations. They also enable remote working, which means we don't have to jump into our polluting cars and waste time going to work every day. We have the option of mixing working remotely from working within offices. The downside, the disadvantages are around how do you control the people who now for the first time have access to these technologies, because they will be introduced into areas where the rules governing misuse of those technologies may not be quite as strong.
So you're thinking like totalitarian governments?
Potentially, yes. And the inability of law enforcement to act upon criminal enterprises misusing those services.
The problem with cybercrime as a whole is the inability for law enforcement to act on those things. I mean, if you're someone living in New York who got scammed by someone from Romania, the local law enforcement can't do anything, and it's a small enough case where Interpol wouldn't do anything. And so they're only really going to focus on those larger gangs anyway. So yeah, that just broadens the whole problem when you introduce more and more people to the ecosystem.
One of the things we think is going to happen in the foreseeable future is that natural language generation models will be used by adversaries, or will they?
Yeah, I believe that they're already at a point where they could be used by adversaries.
What does that look like?
You can use those models to write emails. So you could use them to generate well-written phishing attacks. And every time you ask the model to generate from a description that you provided an email, it will be different. I know, I've tried it. So that's a good way of getting around common anti-spam, anti-phishing solutions. Because what typically happens, or has happened up to this point, is that if someone drafts a spam message, it'll be the same for everyone who receives it.
Yeah.
So you can recognize the pattern in that. But if everyone is generated, it's slightly different, then that pattern no longer exists. Right?
A tax demand from your local council or something like that.
Yes, I mean, all sorts of things, GDPR stuff. We've noticed someone tried to log into your account. I mean, there is some phishing that more relies on the look of the email. If it's phishing that's telling you you've got a package from DHL. There's no point in creating new ones of those. In fact, you want it to look like the actual message you would have gotten from DHL, and you want the email, you want the colors and the logos and everything to be in the right place. So that's not a good case, but a good case would be something more creative.
What about like targeted training? Like I'm thinking about a nightmare for a lot of organizations already is business email compromise.
Right.
Now, let's say an attacker has that access to your emails and has access to a natural language generation model. Just add that corpus to the model and train, like this is what the emails in this organization for this individual look like, generate something that would sort of be familiar to them, something like some kind of an email that they're getting all the time anyway.
You don't even need to train to do that. No, I could take some of your emails.
If you had access to them.
If I had access to them, provide them as part of the prompt. And then at the very end, ask it to write an email in the style of the above emails that says the following.
Right.
And then it would write an email that looked like you had written it.
So you just provide examples to the model and you don't have to train it anything.
A couple of paragraphs is enough. You can also use large language models to craft social media posts, to craft articles, fake news, to troll people. You can ask it to reply to a tweet in a negative and toxic manner. You can ask it to reply in support of a tweet. If you were tweeting a scam out, you could get a bunch of bots to reply in support of it, saying, "Oh yeah, this link, it's really good, and this service that they're providing is, I've used it and it was top class." So you can do all sorts of things. So one idea is to create email threads. Because email threads are quite convincing if you're spear phishing. So you would ask it to write an email and then to reply to the email with this information and then reply to the email. And then all you have to do is take that content and format it so it looks like an email reply chain. That's completely possible.
There's an interesting development which was picked up actually in the latest threat highlight report on our website. Attackers are using links buried in email chains to dupe people or persuade people to click on them because they think somehow because they've passed between people, the link must be verified and safe to click on. Quite ingenious.
It is, and it's psychologically different. Like, if I send you a link, like, please click on this link, you're like, well, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. But if it's there's this link, if it's in there, if you're interested, so you're then choosing yourself to look at that information. Yeah. You don't feel as compelled.
And then if you think about like the effort required to craft an email reply chain, you have to write each email.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you can automate that, so that it will write emails with the correct content, but like slightly different, and you can string those together. You can automate that by square brackets person 1. Square brackets, person 2, and so on. And then just at the end, programmatically change the names and you're done. Send it off. And you can create unique email threads that can be used for spear phishing as many times as you want.
But I also like you were talking about having these automatically generated messages in support or against specific topics or fake news. And, so far we've seen fake news claiming something that's not true or claiming something didn't happen that did. What about a saturation attack, like claiming all sorts of things about this, like more credible, less credible, but just enough of them so that nobody can tell what actually happened among all of this noise?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. One common example that I've seen people use recently is asking large language models to write an article about how eating broken glass is beneficial. The other day, I got it to write an article about how drinking a bottle of wine every night is beneficial to your health.
Okay.
Things like that.
Was it a convincing article?
It was, actually. Yeah, it even included statistics and things.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you fact check it?
No, I didn't. No,
okay.
Because it probably. Yeah, if you ask it 2 bottles of wine a night, it might actually tell you that that's not a good idea. But 1 bottle a night, it was quite fine with that.
We have to find
Sounds
the AI's
like my
limit.
kind of software.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so large language models, I've seen examples of them. They can generate code very well, and we've seen
like
that
actual
a lot
working code.
Actual working code, and they can actually even find bugs and fix the bugs and explain why there was a bug in your code if you provide it. But I saw an example where ChatGPT was asked to generate a post-exploitation payload, and the downloads ransomware from a specified domain using a specified script.
Okay.
And it not only generated the script, but it actually explained what it was doing as it sort of annotated the whole thing.
Commented it.
Yes. So I can see a future where large language models might actually be useful for things like red teaming or even for attackers. And I can imagine there are going to be some of these startups, cybersecurity startups, that claim to use large language models to do red teaming.
But now we're talking about a fairly automated level of attack. Like some of the stuff we spoke about earlier just makes it easier for a human being to sort of attack other human beings by just prompting the machine learning models to do things. But now we're getting to a point where it's almost starting to happen by itself. There's been talk about adversarial machine learning attacks that are coming. The AIs are going to be independently coming after us in the cyber world, if not in the real world quite yet. Is that going to happen in 2023, Andy?
So when we talk about adversarial attacks against machine learning models, we're talking about those attacks that are either poisoning, where you
okay, so the attacks are adversarial, not the AIs themselves.
Not the AIs themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. So poisoning attacks where you modify the data that the model is retrained on, so that it doesn't work the way it should. You can leave in backdoors or bypasses. Or we're talking about adversarial attacks where you trick the model into doing something that it shouldn't. For instance, you've probably seen the one where you take a photo of a panda and then you just apply some noise to it, and then suddenly it's no longer recognized as a panda, although to our eyes we still see it as a panda, right? And a similar thing with ChatGPT. ChatGPT was meant to be specifically trained so that it wouldn't tell you how to build a bomb or certain things. It wouldn't be racist. And people have figured out how to write prompts for it so that you can bypass those checks and balances. So that's another example of adversarial inputs.
But I know that you're personally very skeptical about whether or not we're going to be seeing these attacks, but it sounds like we already are.
We are to a certain extent. I consider these things as proof of concept.
Okay.
And of course, lots of proof of concepts exist. I think an actual real world attack with some implications is not likely to happen in the next year. I don't think we have enough motivation to perform those sort of attacks. I don't think we have machine learning in such absolutely critical places that it's worth performing those attacks.
I think in some areas, machine learning is going to be slower to take off. I think, for example, a speech recognition software, which was touted as the cheap replacement for customer service reps in call centers. And when it came out in the 30 or so years ago, there was much hope assigned to it, but the reality was quite different. People absolutely hated talking to machines. And it never really took off, at least not for that use case. I think the same will apply to new technologies like machine learning. It will be very much case dependent as to whether or not they succeed and how quickly.
One thing that we did see this year was a model being stolen, but it wasn't stolen via a model stealing attack. It was stolen because there was bad security on the place where it was being hosted. And that was Novel AI's model. It's one of those AI art models, but it generates manga type of art. And people stole the model because that service costs money. You have to subscribe to it to use their model. So they wanted the model so they could make their own art without having to pay for the service. And so I think we're more likely to see those sorts of things.
Okay.
That was a specific model. So it was an AI art model, but it was actually fine-tuned on generating specific type of art. So the original Stable Diffusion model is quite widely available. Yeah. But that one was fine-tuned, and that's where the value came. That's why people had an incentive to steal it.
So I would like to finish off this sort of talking about the future predictions episode by inviting you both to come up with a crazy prediction. I'm talking like real moonshots right now. Something that if it ends up happening, you're going to be seen as a prophet, but maybe is a fairly outside chance. Anything like that?
Well, I'm not going to come up with a crazy prediction, but I'm going to come up with an aphorism which I think is very pertinent to the world of predictions. And this was a statement made by a South African psychologist whose name was Kurt Danziger. So to give him credit for this, but he summed it up perfectly. He says, "We love predictions because they soothe our fears about the future. They fortify us and keep us from falling apart. And the truth of the matter is that we seek predictions, we consider predictions, we value predictions, not because they indicate future reality, but they remove uncertainty from our lives, even if they are wrong. There was a famous, and again, another psychologist, there's a bit of a theme here. His name's Philip Tetlock, and if you want to read more about a world authority on psychology of predictions, just Google Philip Tetlock. And he wrote a book called Super Forecasting, which was his experience of experiment run with IARPA, who were the research arm of the Department of Defense in the US, who recognized that they were less accurate insofar as their predictions, despite all the resources available to them, than individual forecasters with sort of open sources only available to them. And they sought to understand why. And, well, to cut a long story short, after much research conducted by IARPA and by Philip Tetlock, they were able to sort of classify forecasters into two types. One were the hedgehogs, and these were people who have able to create a hypothesis and assemble facts together to support their hypothesis and create a very convincing story. These are the sorts of people we listen to on TV. They're the TV pundits who talk about the economy. Well, economists for a starter, all hedgehogs, but also football pundits and so forth. They also happen to be the least accurate forecasters of them all. The most accurate are what he called the foxes, and these are people who create a hypothesis but are continually challenging it, introducing new data, reevaluating their hypothesis and evolving it. They make absolutely terrible pundits because they're qualifying everything they say and they don't say anything with any certainty. So that they're not great to listen to, but they are, however, the most accurate. These are the people who work for security agencies, I expect.
All right. Andy, any predictions you would like to soothe our fears with?
You told me to make a really wild prediction.
Okay.
So GPT-4 will probably be announced in January or February.
Okay.
And there are rumors that it's 3 orders of magnitude larger than GPT-3, but those are just rumors. But anyway, people who have played with it have said that it makes GPT-3 look like nothing.
So paint me a picture. What will be possible?
I'm going to just make one prediction that GPT-4 will actually be able to interact with command line and do things. So you'll be able to open a command prompt to shell, and it'll learn to do things from that.
Based on some of my prompts, I'll just tell it to, why don't you go ahead and patch all those Oracle systems we have, and it'll just go ahead and do it.
Not quite that, but I think it'll be able to interact with it and learn, like, to CD around and ls and run other commands and org sed and all these. I think it'll be able to learn those.
That was the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please get in touch with us through Twitter with the hashtag Cybersauna with your feedback, comments and ideas. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe.